Hey friends, what's up and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you the best palettes for the summertime. I love playing around with color, bright color, reds, oranges, honestly the whole rainbow if I'm being honest, during the summertime especially. So I went through my entire eyeshadow palette collection and I pulled out palettes that I think are palettes that I know for a fact that I'm going to be reaching for come the summertime, but palettes that I feel like are really fun palettes if you love to change up your makeup depending on the season. So we're gonna dive into it. So without further ado, let's get into the video. The first palette is from Kaleidos. This is the Escape Pod palette. Now this is very fun. Though the packaging is more on the chunky side, it is very sturdy. But this is the color story of this palette. It is fun, it's fresh, it's bright, and do not get me started with their shimmers. Their shimmers are absolutely beautiful. I love Kaleidos. I love their formulas. I just love how pigmented the mattes are and how beautiful the shimmers are as well. I love indie brands. Indie brands really have a lot of, you know, higher end, bigger brands beat. Truly, I'm sure that's no surprise to anyone. But this is my favorite palette from Kaleidos. I've tried a couple, but this one is the one that I gravitate to the most. The shimmers are just so buttery and so reflective, and I think this is a perfect palette for the summer. The next palette is kind of like an odd one. This is honestly a palette that I feel like can really work for all year round, but that is the Nomad Royal Europe palette. This palette is so beautiful. Now the tones in here are very deep kind of tones. I feel like this palette is great in particular for monochromatic looks. Each column in this palette is basically a look in itself. I love to do a lot of monochromatic looks because sometimes I want a really easy look and I don't really want to have to think about it. I feel like this palette is absolutely perfect. Though there really isn't lighter toned shades, I still love this one, especially because it gives you the depth that you need and that you want. There's also multi-chromes in this palette. This palette has 5 multi-chromes. Hello, talk about a fun eye look for the summer, but I really love this palette. I think it's absolutely beautiful. It's not like your super bright shades, but it is still a colorful palette and it is absolutely gorgeous, and the formula is top tier. The next palette is also from Nomad, and I honestly do not know how to pronounce this palette, but it is this one with the little sloth on the front. It's so pretty. I really love this one as well, but this one is so gorgeous. It's like green with pops of color. I feel like the tones in here are really beautiful. There isn't much to deepen up with this palette, but I feel like if you are just getting into color, this is such a gorgeous palette. A lot of the shimmers are green except for this one right here. It's kind of like a bluish kind of shimmer. I haven't tried any of Nomad's palettes. I definitely recommend trying them out. They are an indie brand and they also are basically based on like their palettes, and their whole brand is based on places that they've traveled to. It's really cool. I really love what the brand stands for. Now this next palette is one of my favorite summertime palettes. It is the ABH Primrose palette. This is a classic for me. I have loved this palette for the summer every single year since this came out. It is such a beautiful palette. This was ABH's first time doing their new formula, and this formula is truly better than their OG eyeshadow formula. This is insanely good. If you've been eyeing any of the new ABH palettes in this formula, I definitely recommend doing Primrose first. I kind of wish that they made this smaller and got rid of these 2 blush shades. I don't really use those much, but the eyeshadows, stunning. I love it. The shimmers are beautiful and so eye-catching. This is such a great summertime palette because you have like rusty purples, you have like your rust colors, your oranges, your terracottas. Everything about this just screams summer to me. This is always a go-to palette, especially when I'm traveling, so I love it. Next palette comes from the ABH Norvina collection. Now, I love the Norvina palettes. I feel like they are a very interesting formula to work with. A lot of the shades in these palettes are made up of pressed pigments, which my recommendation for using any of the Norvina palettes is to pack the shadow, then blend, not blend as you put them on the eyes. You kind of have to work with pressed pigments a little bit differently than eyeshadows. But the palette that I chose for this video is the third volume. This one, every time I open it up, it screams summer to me. It just looks like a tropical vacation palette. It is so beautiful. I know my lights are kind of washing out these palettes, but if this does not scream summer, I don't know what does. I absolutely love this. This is also another palette that I feel like would be great for beginners, color story wise, because it honestly is like a neutral palette with a ton of pops of color. It is absolutely beautiful. The shimmers are gorgeous as well. And I don't feel like any of these tones are too overwhelming of color, if that makes sense. I think it is such a beautiful palette to have and to play with during the summer. Next palette I talk about all the time, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But if you're new here, this may be new to you, but the Flower Beauty Desert Lights palette is truly a game changer when it comes to your summer staples. Honestly, your year-round staples as well. This is an all metallic shimmer palette, but when I tell you these look like liquid metal on the eyes, they are so beautiful. I absolutely love this formula. I really want Flower Beauty to come out with more palettes in this formula. I don't know what's taken so long, but I love this and it is so beautiful. They just look really intense, and I love using these with the BH Primrose palette. I feel like these tones just pair so well with that one. So if you're the kind of person that loves a one and done type of eyeshadow, this is it right here. Absolutely love it. I think it's definitely one of the best eyeshadow type of formulas at the drugstore. Next, we have a couple of Glamlite palettes. I feel like Glamlite comes out with a lot of colorful palettes. And of course, this next palette screams summer. Literally is a summer palette. That's like how it's themed. But it is the Barbie Dream Summer palette. This is gorgeous. If you love color, you are going to love this palette. This is one of my favorite palettes from Glamlite. I feel like every time I want to do a colorful look, this is one of the palettes that I'm reaching for. I don't think I'll ever get tired of this palette. I just love the tones in here. The shimmers are really, really good. Something about this palette is just insanely good. I love putting purple, blue, and pink on the eyes. So this palette is just made up of all of my favorite tones of eyeshadow. Now the other one is the Glamlite Ice Cream Dream palette, which is a beautiful pastel palette. But I feel like this one is a little bit more wearable for those of you who love color, or if you want to play around with color as well. You also have more like neutrally tones towards the top. You have some neutral shimmers. But because this is a pastel palette, I feel like this is going to look beautiful on all skin tones. Now this is one of my favorite pastel palettes in general because it will show up on people of color. A lot of the tones show literally true to color and I absolutely love it. Highly recommend this one as well. Next two palettes are from Blend Bunny Cosmetics. This next one is the Blends palette. This is literally a staple. These mattes literally blend themselves. I've talked about it so much the past month and I really, really love it. It is just that good. And I feel like any color that you could ever want for your summer look, you have like your oranges, you have like your sunset tones, your yellows, you have everything that you need. You even have neutrals in here. You just want to take one of these shades in the crease and then pop any shimmer, like the all shimmer Flower Beauty palette on the lid. You have a completed eye look. I feel like you don't have to think too much with this one because it is all matte. So any look that you create with this, I feel like you can get a completed look because I love an all matte look. I live for one. Trust me, I love my shimmers, but nothing beats an all matte look. I just love it. Now the other Blend Bunny palette is the Surge palette, and this one is also a rainbow-esque palette, but I pulled this one because it has those neons and the corresponding shimmers as well. So this palette paired with the Blends palette is also a really beautiful summer palette combination. Even if you just get either one, you will have a completed look with both of these palettes, which is why I love them. But I know for a fact I will be pulling this out a lot during the summer. I think this is a great palette to pick up and use during the summer. The last palette that I have in today's video for the best palettes for summer is from Beauty Bay, and it is the Beauty Bay Bright 2.0 palette. Just look at how gorgeous and yummy this palette looks. Are you joking? This is stunning. Like, this is beautiful. This is honestly the only palette that you could ever need for the summer. Like, not even kidding. If I didn't have any of these other palettes, I feel like this will be perfect because it has everything that you need. You have your oranges, you have your reds. It literally is a rainbow palette, but you also have your shimmers included as well. I also love that these are like more of like the brighter tones of the classic rainbow shades as well. So this palette is really, really beautiful. I love it. You all know I love Beauty Bay. Beauty Bay has one of my favorite eyeshadow formulas, so you really can't go wrong with any of their palettes. Those are just some of the palettes I pulled out that I think are the best for the summer. There are a lot of other palettes in my collection, but I just pulled out the palettes that I know for a fact personally what I'm going to be reaching for and the reasons why. So let me know your thoughts down below. What palettes are you going to be reaching for this summer? And let your girl know down below, and I'll catch you guys in my next one. Bye, guys.